Got it.
Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to the most recent conversation with friends. This is a very exciting one, and I don't think my guest needs any introduction. It is, of course, my hero, my friend, and Ken Burnett. Ken, thank you for joining us.
Well, I was going to say it's a pleasure, Michelle, but it's very early in the morning here. It's about 7:30, and yeah, apart from that, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Ken. And it's getting dark here. I know the time difference doesn't work very well, but you've had an eventful morning. You've had to move camper vans around tiny spaces and done all sorts already. So we're ready for this interview.
Absolutely, yes.
People are aware the interview is going to take place because I think I shout it from the rooftops about relationship fundraising and yourself. So we have met today because very soon your third edition of relationship fundraising is about to be published. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, it should be ready. All things going well, it'll be ready, published in June. Yeah.
June.
So we'll have first copies available then. Yeah.
And so since 1977, you have been fundraising. You first wrote this book in 1992. I guess for those of us who follow your practices and have known about them, we know that despite the changes and advances in technology, the basic principles of relationship fundraising hasn't changed. But I suspect actually one of the reasons you've written this is there is definitely updates. Would that be right?
Yes, indeed. Well, a lot has happened over the last 32 years. So the second edition came out in 2002. And that required quite a bit of updating. So what I've done is I've updated the original text of 14 chapters, but I've also added 15 appendices focusing on things that really weren't high on my agenda in 1992, but which are very high on the agenda now. And some of these are really substantial changes. I mean, apart from the trauma of the events of 2015 to 2017 in the UK, which was a catastrophe for fundraising because of poor fundraising practices. So that's actually changed the focus. But now it tends that people are thinking much more about the donor experience, and organizational culture is a thing that's a kind of a bee in my bonnet. So there's a whole range of areas that are new. But as you said, Michelle, and you're absolutely right, the essential tenets of relationship fundraising haven't changed. And in fact, I think they're more important now than ever, because our publics are, they're not going to give us the leeway. They're not going to make allowances for charities that in the way that they did in the past. And so we have, I think, a duty to properly look after these wonderful people who make everything that we do possible, and without them we would really be in a great deal of difficulty. And one thing that I keep kind of coming back to is the belief that if giving is a good experience, people will do more of it, and if it isn't, they'll soon stop. And the fact that giving is entirely voluntary, to me, defines or sets the framework within which we have to plan our fundraising communications and strategies, because we can't get away from that. I think it makes fundraising much more interesting, more fun, more enjoyable. So, a lot of the focus in the third edition of relationship fundraising is on delivering benefits for fundraisers so that they can better deliver benefits for donors. It really is a win-win.
Absolutely. And I know, I think in one of your more recent books, it's something that's always stuck with me. You talk about, we're in the business of inspiration, and I think that is the kind of language fundraisers need to hear. Every fundraiser can have that barbecue conversation that you feel uncomfortable. You've somehow got to, make excuses for your job. But actually, once fundraisers are empowered, that they are actually in the business of inspiring generosity.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's fantastic. We get paid for doing this.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I believe we're professional storytellers, and we've got the best stories in the world to tell and the best of reasons for telling them. And we have to tell those stories with power and passion that will move people to action. And if we can do that, I mean, it's a consummate skill. It's one of the best business skills that you could possibly have. So it's actually transferable into almost any business area. But with fundraising, we really have the resources, life and death issues, the dramas, the human interest that most of our causes, all of our causes, in one way or another espouse. And that makes the whole business of fundraising a tremendously challenging and richly rewarding area. And we need to get that known, because I would love to see a better understanding of the potential of fundraising. In fact, that's a kind of core motivation for me to get this new book, which will, I promise, Michelle, it will be my last fundraising book. As you well know, I'm not just getting over the hill, I'm sort of halfway down the other side. And but it is really important.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about the other day too was that not the other side of, we know as well through studies as time's gone on, that actually being generous and being generous and what it does for the donor, it help. Now we know that you're happier, you're healthier, you're better rounded relationships, you have stronger relationships and everything. And almost, if we can inspire people who have never given before, hear me out on this, not only are we helping the cause, but we're actually helping that person have all the feelings. And
well, I couldn't agree with you more, Michelle. And as you know, when I was last in New Zealand and Australia, this was a big part of my kind of almost recent discovery of something that I hadn't fully understood. And I think it's still an evolving science, but actually that giving is good for you.
Yeah.
And we don't make we as a profession don't make nearly enough of this. There's really rich potential. So one of the 15 appendices in the new relationship fundraising is focusing on the benefits for the donor of being a donor. And these are really considerable. And there's also a very wide acceptance in the scientific community, particularly among behavioral scientists, that giving does you good, and it's got all sorts of benefits, a whole range of benefits, and they're really quite fundamental, particularly for people who are, maybe coming towards the end of their working lives, the traditional donors, the 55 plus, comfortably off, getting up to retirement and looking forward, but they're looking forward to an active life now, which is very different from their predecessors 30, 40 years ago. Retirement is not the kind of the beginning of decline. It's actually the best opportunity that will come your way. And we fundraisers have got such a fantastic chance to help people to add meaning and fulfillment to their lives. And I think that's that should promise a very rich future for fundraisers.
Absolutely. Even the younger
generation. We can tell that right.
Even the younger generation, my children, if I can encourage them to become generous philanthropists, generous donors at 25, 30, and know that it will all the benefits it will offer them for the rest of their life, as well as the change they will make to the cause they choose to care about. for me, that is so exciting. It's like, not only can I, if I can inspire you enough to actually become a donor for the first time, and it enhances your life in all of these ways, what a special place to be in.
Absolutely. And as you imply, that's a long-term process. It's
Yeah.
not about quick hits and immediate return. And so, the other aspects of this, I think, are I've spent the last several decades working with not-for-profit organizations, large and small, national and international, and they have they're all obsessed with strategy,
Yeah.
whereas actually I think they should focus more on culture.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you need to have a strategy, but that strategy needs to be embedded in an organizational personality that's really clear and really understood and that stands out. And we've been set such a poor example by our political leaders. I don't know. I imagine Australians and New Zealanders sitting watching Britain now and seeing the likes of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss and thinking, oh my God, and Donald Trump and all these guys. They're setting such an appalling example. And we fundraisers, I think, have to stand for something. And if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
And so getting that culture right, getting the integrity and building on the trust and confidence that's so essential for fundraising to work, of course, that's a long-term process. And of course, it involves relationships, and you can't, if what you're doing is pressurizing people and persisting and just being generally unwelcome, which so often is the case in fundraising, of course that's not going to work. So the great thing now, the thing that's so encouraging for me as I come to the end of my working life is that this seems now to be being accepted. The difference, though, is that at the moment it's still not clearly visible enough to our donors. So fundraisers have sort of bought, they talk the
They like the idea of it, but when it comes to, I think that's what, that tactical, yes, we're relationship fundraisers, but actually, are they? What is it they're doing? You can't just believe that it's a philosophy. And I think, so the new book, Ken, let's go back just a little bit quickly. I know I don't have you for very long, but why did you write the book in the first place? And why have we come to the third edition? I think you briefly explained that. But the first book, why did you write that?
Well, back in the 1990s, there was very little around to support fundraisers. And, I think the thing that I've had a fantastic career in fundraising, and I want to share to be as helpful as I possibly can be, and also to try and inspire people to see the potential in what they're doing as fundraisers. But in the late 80s, I started to think that there was a need for a good book. There was no good book in Britain. There were several books in America, but they didn't really fit the UK context or the international context. Now, what you have to realize is that I was starting an agency, which was the first agency of its kind in Europe, which focused entirely on the not-for-profit sector, the charity sector, the for change sector. And I thought that I should write a how-to book which would set out the steps that you need to follow, particularly through things like communications, direct mail, telephone, all the different channels of fundraising.
Yeah.
And midway through preparing it, I came upon relationship marketing. It was actually an article written by a friend of mine who was in a different direct marketing agency. And she was doing predictions for the 90s. and she predicted that there would be a move towards relationship marketing. And it was like a light went on for me, because I thought, that's it, that's what's missing, is that we're not the same as commercial suppliers. What we need is something which defines our very particular relationship with our customers. So I developed what my late great business partner George Smith called a great big point of view, and the book really focused on this great big point of view. And that's not an idle thing, because I was writing a book, and I thought, if I can get this book into the hands of just 50 people, and those were going to be the 50 people who were going to be clients of my agency, that would be enough. And actually it was an order from the Fundraising Institute of Australia for 250 copies of the first printing. That made me think, wow, wait a minute, maybe there's something going on here. And then I went to Australia under the guidance, though I didn't really realize it at the time, of the wonderful Peter Dalton, and I did a series of seminars in Australia, and I suddenly realized this book had got legs. And it was then reprinted 10 years later it was reissued, updated by me, by Wiley's in the United States, and they made a success of it. But after 20 years, I was thinking, well, time to let it go. But then two things happened at the tail end of the year before last. One was I was invited to give a seminar in Italy, and Italian audiences, I've spoken in Italy a few times, and the language is always a challenge, and so it's difficult. But anyway, I went to this event, and it was quite amazing, because people were queuing up with their books, their copies, their dog-eared copies of Relationship Fundraising, and getting me to sign them. And these were Italian fundraisers, and they said some lovely things. And I sort of thought, wow, there's still a lot of people who don't want to see this book come to an end. And then I was contacted by the Polish Fundraising Association, and they said, we've got a grant from an international trust. There is no book on fundraising in Polish, but we've been given a grant, and we've just got enough money for one book, and we'd like it to be relationship fundraising. And I said, wow, you do realize that book is over 30 years old? And they said, no, that's the one we want. And just both of these things made me think, well, it's going to be out of print shortly. And then Jim Hilborn, wonderful Jim Hilborn in Canada, contacted me, and he said, I would like you to reissue. And in fact, he's taken over all the White Lion Press titles that my wife Marie produced, and that's fantastic. I'm really pleased about that. So this book is coming out, but it is going to be quite a big book, and everybody says to me, oh, if it's not on 2 sides of A4, people are not going to read it. And I think, well, tell that to Charles Dickens.
The original, pretty much the original book with the appendices at the back. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. So that's about a third. It's grown by about a third. Wow. But, so the main bulk of it is still the original text, and that's got a lot of how to. I hope every fundraiser would find something. Would find a lot of value and use.
What I love about your books is at the end of each chapter, there's almost like a task list or a to-do list or a top 10.
Yeah, the action points. Yes.
Yeah, I mean they're just brilliant. They're They're easy to find, and you know where to go to. And yeah, I love it. The Are you happy with this final version, so you say?
Um, yeah, well, I'm generally happy about most things, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. I think I have, I'm fairly easily pleased. No, I'm very glad to have the chance to update the book, because it's a lot has happened. I have actually put into this edition a much stronger call to action. I do think that unless fundraisers take direct action, and that action is really more to do with their culture and with inculcating that into new people who, we get some of the best motivated, talented, creative people coming into our sector, and so many of them leave before they've really had a chance to make the potential contribution that they could make.
Yeah.
And I really want to see steps taken to change that. So you know, Michelle, about the events that happened in the UK, the so-called Olive Cook scandal. Yeah, and the brilliant thing was that when we set up the Commission on the Donor Experience, which was to define this thing that I'd been going on about for a while, of the donor experience, and that's become the kind of cliche. Everybody is talking about delivering a good donor experience, and there was over 2,000 volunteers came forward to help the Commission to define best practice in really effectively relationship fundraising. And I'm reproducing at the back of the book in the second last appendix in full the summary document, the 6Ps document, from the Commission on the Donor Experience. And it was my job at the time to write that. And it was one of the most difficult jobs to condense down into 8 pages the findings of that fantastic body of people. But that unique coming together of people from the fundraising community, that showed me that fundraisers really care and they really want to get this right. But it's not simple. It's not an easy task. I think it's a very rewarding task, but ours is an exceptionally complex art. It's an art and a craft and a science, all rolled in together. And I think that's what makes the job so interesting. But I would say it's not easy. And yet there are no absolute requirements. People can come in and start fundraising, and they don't need to know anything. And still, far too many organizations in the sector are not giving people the right start. So one of the appendices is about giving fundraisers the right start. If everybody could have the same basic grounding, then I think we would
That's
be
one of
much.
the things I said at the fundraising nest was I strongly believe that if we had been looking after our fundraisers as well as we know how to look after donors through good relationship fundraising, we would have a much happier, healthier, more fruitful sector. And I worry it's come a little bit too late too. We need to start looking after our fundraisers and loving them the way we love our donors, because
Absolutely, Michelle. That's music to my ears. I'm delighted to hear you saying that, because I think that's one of the focuses of this third edition, is that I did try right at the beginning to define what it means to be a fundraiser. And I think we need to go a lot further in that. But, to me, this is the beginning, or it's not the beginning, but it's part of the evolution of our sector. And when I started in fundraising, it wasn't a proper job for a grown person. You know, you just didn't tell your mother what you did for a
Yeah.
living. And it, you know, I mean, my mother had real difficulty coping with the fact that I used to produce direct mail. If she knew that I'd been involved with Greenpeace in starting chugging around the world, she would have finished it off, I think. But you know, so I think so many things have changed positively for the better, but we've still got some way to go.
There is, and one of the, you know, one of my over in recent years, and it, you know, it's not something that many people like to say, but when I have been working with organizations, or what I want organizations to seriously consider is, are you raising money because you can or because you need to? And I think sometimes there's too many organizations raising money because they can. They don't ever go, okay, we've raised enough year on year. No fundraiser gets told, well done, we don't need so much money next year, or we'll just keep it at that level. The bar has been raised, but actually why? I think there's not enough. Just because we can is not good enough for me.
Well, I think that's a symptom of a wider problem, which is that for so many organizations, fundraising is set off to one side, and the senior leadership team and the board of trustees don't, they just really look for it to provide them the money, you know. It's all about, you know, you go away and do your grubby little money raising things, and what we want is more money than we had last year, and then more money the following year, and that's got to change. And again, that's a really important part of the culture of our organizations. And one of the appendices is about investment in fundraising, because I see, you know, there are so many false economies in the fundraising sector, and there is so much you know, kind of craziness that goes around about you know, just lack of understanding of what's needed to make fundraising
Absolutely.
work.
How can you have a
And
major
it's
gift
got to come central.
How can you have a major gift program done properly when fundraisers leave every 18 months? It doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Successful one. So, you know, we all know the answers. We say it over and over.
Well,
We are almost coming to an end. When, how, where, who, what can we get this book? I can't wait to get my hands.
Okay, well, there will be very soon going up. There will be a site on the Hilburn, the Civil Sector Press in Toronto is the website to go for, but there will be a special place where people can order the new book, and as I say, that should be available within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I hope. And the book will be coming out soon, and I hope that everyone will want to have a copy, not just on their bookshelf, but actually open on their desk and maybe read some bits of it. It is a book that you can dip into as you need, and it's I do have still to finish the index, which is quite a challenge. No,
maybe getting out to Australia, maybe that's something we need to think about. Fundraising Nest community, if you're interested, it might work out cheaper for us to do a shipment of books over to Australia. Those are the kinds of things I might explore later, because if it's going to be a big book, getting it over here, but it will be fabulous. Ken, any final thoughts for this is your last book, you reckon? This is no more additions from Ken Burnett.
Well, I've actually said that before, to be quite honest, and nobody believes me. So
I don't at all.
But you know, I tell you what, in the last few years, just before COVID hit, I was writing plays, which were being put on by our very amateur dramatic group in my village in Suffolk. And that was great fun. But I'm also I'm learning to be a potter. We've converted our garage into a pottery, so and that's making things. I love doing that.
But do you know, Ken, while you're sitting there making beautiful pots, your brain will be thinking, and it will be going round. You'll have more time to think, which means you'll be like, oh, that should go down on a book.
Well, or I'll be encouraging people like you to write
well, that's my
your
one.
story. And no, I honestly believe it. It's time I step back, and there's plenty of other talented people around who are coming forward, and I want to hear what they're going to say. And if I don't like it, I'll tell them.
And I know you are wearing around your neck a punamu, a green stone.
Oh yes, I've got my punamu
from Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yeah,
and,
but I've also got my Australian T-shirt on.
Yes, which is bridging the gap of Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is absolutely beautiful. Ken, thank you so much for giving me this time in this interview. I know a few people, you would not believe how many people have said to me recently, did you say you were going to do this? Are you doing an interview with Ken soon about his new book? And I was like, yes, it's coming. So I'm sure this will be received very well by many people who are looking forward to the updates. I am fascinated. I can't wait to read about the updates. It's a book that you do read, and yeah, I just can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on the changes that we have saw, and the changes that we need to make.
Where do we go from here? That's the question.
Absolutely. Sir Ken, as you are to me, thank you so much, my friend. Please give my dear love to Ginny and enjoy your trip. I know you're about to head off overseas.
Thanks very much, Michelle. It's always a delight to talk to you, and I think what you're doing with the fundraising nest is absolutely great. So I'm going to stay involved with that, if I may.
You're a maven. You're one of our mavens.
I don't know what a maven does, but I'm happy to learn.
You've just being Ken and aligning with the idea of what we're doing is all I ask of you, Ken. It's like having a superstar.
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, and after Barbie, Ken and Barbie, the Kens are being appreciated all over the world. And I remember that being told that, the great thing about Ken is that if you get fed up with him, you can get another one for $7.95. So, so it is kind of good to be a Ken, although we are expendable.
Yes. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. That's a wrap from Ken B and Mr. B. Thank you for tuning in to the Fundraising Nest Conversation with Friends. We will put up details along with the video of where to look for the book coming out, and do let us know what you think of the book. We will absolutely share your comments and with the community. That's all for now. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. Good luck. All best. Happy fundraising.
Yes. Goodbye.